made our way to Boston, and we're staying in the RV over in Salem. We'll do a separate video on that, but hit some of the highlights that we'll see in Boston today. Behind us, we start out here at Paul Revere's house. He lived in it from 1770 to about 1800, and the house was built in the 1600s, 1680. It's the oldest structure here in Boston. Paul Revere, I'm sure everybody should know. He came through town.
Well, he left this house on that famous ride. So he actually left this house on that ride to Concord, basically to try to warn everyone that the Redcoats were coming by sea to Lexington to have the very first battle of the Revolutionary War. So he is the one that's responsible, and this is the house that he left. And later on, we'll go to the church where his two partners hung the actual lanterns to warn everybody here that they were coming by sea.
Cool. Awesome stuff here in Boston. So as we're walking the Freedom Trail, we came on this house. It was actually owned by John Hancock. His brother lived in Ebenezer, and it was still in the late 1700s until the 1960s. It had a shoe store on the first floor. So pretty cool. John Hancock's one of his houses. And the Freedom Trail is that line of bricks there. You follow that line of bricks around Boston, you see all kinds of cool stuff. Okay, so I'm going to pick back up a little extra information here. This house behind us that was owned by John Hancock, turns out that it's right across the street from this tavern. This is the longest running tavern in the United States. And who drank there?
Paul Revere and Samuel Adams. And it didn't allow women in until 1960.
No women till the 1960s. And Hancock, Revere, Adams were all in there, all went here to drink.
The only time it closed was Prohibition.
Awesome. So we had to come in because how can you pass the oldest tavern in the United States with people like Paul Revere and Hancock and Samuel Adams that drank here? This bar top, they said, is actually the original from the 1700s. So you can come in and sit down and have a beer and a burger like we are on the same bar top that they were sitting at. So I had to add that building in just because it's such a historic part. I mean, it was built in the 1740s and donated to the people of the city. Still in use. It's got a museum and some shops and stuff inside. Okay, so this is the site of the Boston Massacre.
Paul Revere basically used this to hype everybody up, get them all ticked off so they would fight the Redcoats.
Which was a good plan.
Worked like a charm.
So this building was built in 1729. And it's pretty cool because Benjamin Franklin was baptized here, and Samuel Adams gave his speech to about 5,000 people to start the Boston Tea Party. Pretty cool stuff, right? Yep. All right, now we're at the old City Hall. This City Hall was 1865 to 1969. So that was the City Hall that is now turned into a Ruth Chris Steakhouse. That statue is Quincy. He was the mayor in the 1800s, maybe 1840-ish, I'm guessing, or 1830s. He was on the Senate and Congress in earlier 1800s, and he was the president of Harvard after he was mayor here in Boston. So we're at the King's Chapel burial ground, and that is King's Chapel right there, which was the first public school. This cemetery has got somebody that was on the Mayflower was buried here. And just looking around, I see people in the 16 and 1700s. So we're at the Granary Cemetery. And this is marking Paul Revere. So Paul Revere's tomb is this little headstone right here.
Maybe it was a gunshot. There goes the gun. Lots of them.
And right before this video started, we heard a bunch of people yelling, and then what sounded like 2 gunshots. Out of sight somewhere, could hear it off in the distance. So maybe it was gunshots. Well, it turns out somebody did get shot. So, everyday heroes at work right here.
Thank God I crossed the fucking country.
So that was looking at Bolton Finch. Bolton Finch is actually the bar that they did Cheers.
So Josh and I actually sat in that window right there that they used to kind of soft film at with some of the openings and stuff.
So this is Boston Gardens, across from Cheers, bar set up, and a couple hundred yards from where we saw the leftover of that shooting earlier. I'm still a little bit frustrated about what happened there. If you, as we were approaching where that guy was shot, we see that there is just, I don't know, a couple hundred people just standing around watching. And as we got closer, that's when EMS was arriving. But nobody had arrived on EMS yet. There's a guy laying on the sidewalk shot. You got a couple hundred people standing around, staring at this guy. And, I don't know, 50, 75 different phones are out. And nobody's over there helping. And then as the cops are saying to, stay away, back up, to give the EMS room, you've got people that are just yelling at the cops. I mean, man, if you see somebody laying on the sidewalk, bleeding, I mean, put your damn hands on them and try to stop the bleeding. Try to do something. Don't just stand around and stare with your phone. It's ridiculous. And sure, don't start yelling at the cops as the cops are trying to tell you to get back, get away, so the EMS crew can actually work. And our society is so messed up sometimes. And so Boston, if you didn't know, has a subway system. I had no idea. It's not a very big subway system. It kind of reminds me of Washington, D.C., where it just has a few fingers that shoot out certain areas. It's nothing like being in New York. And so there's a little Italy area downtown Boston. Looks like it's a pretty nice place to eat.
Do you want to know what this church is about, or what?
Yeah, this church right here.
Okay.
What is this church about?
This is the church that Paul Revere sent the signal to when he did his famous ride, and his buddies put up in the steeple, go up the steeple, up, film up, up, put the lanterns up in the top of the steeple to let them know that the British were coming by sea and to be ready for the attack in Lexington. That's it.
Was that one lantern or two? Two lanterns. One by land, two by sea. She's so smart. There's the USS Constitution. Kind of wraps up our Boston trip. Okay, so we are wrapping up the Boston trip. We're back on the road and we're heading to Jersey. We're going to go down to RV park that is close to the Hudson River. I think it's almost on the Hudson River.
On the river.
On the river.
Liberty Harbor.
Liberty Harbor, okay, and that's going to have some kind of a view towards the city and be real close to the transit to get in. But highlights of our Boston trip, you know, I don't know, I'd say there's so much to see there, and you probably need at least a couple days. I mean, if you're going to go to Boston, you know, a couple days there. There's a trolley tour that we plan on doing maybe the next time we go. That is 2 hours if you just never even get off the trolley. So to hear that much information, plus, I don't know, maybe 15 stops that it has. So that could be really cool, a whole day just doing that. The Paul Revere stuff was really great. You know, you hear about Paul Revere and what he did, and, you know, it's more like a legend, you know what I mean? Like, you hear about it all the way back in elementary school, but you can't really put, you know, a place with it. And to actually go back and, you know, see his house and his church, that was, you know, that was amazing. And then, you know, going to the cemetery so you can kind of see his whole life. You can even, you know, see his headstone there where he's buried. And, I don't know, that was that, and going to the Bell in Hand, that had to be that. If you go there, you have to get the ale. It's their longest running beer that they've had. It's probably the best beer that I've ever had in my life. So
Great, definite highlight for me was Bell in Hand. That was awesome, sitting at a bar that was made in 1775. Literally the exact same bar top. Really cool. Some stuff we didn't get to, like you said, the tour. Definitely would take a tour of Fenway Park. Who knows how much longer that's going to be there. All of our baseball parks seem to be rebuilt and disappear soon, so definitely would do that. Maybe catch a Celtics game. For sure 3 days. I think you need 3 days there.
3 days would be good. Or more. But at least two. At least 2 or 3 days. Plan to be there. So, and if while you're there and you see somebody shot,
help them, because everybody else just pulls their cell phone out.
Yeah, get out there and don't leave them laying on the sidewalk bleeding and recording them with nobody helping. So, if somebody is helping, then maybe be the person to help keep everybody back enough where that person can help. And be willing to take the abuse of the people telling you that you shouldn't do that. So, yep, that was Boston. Awesome place. Check it out.